Hello, this is Old School from WhatTheBuck.net, coming to you live and direct from Valrico, Florida, giving us a recap on the Carolina Panthers Tampa Bay Buccaneers game that took place this Sunday. It was a big division rivalry. I know my boy Big Nick from Ball State, who does an awesome show or an awesome YouTube on the Carolina Panthers, and I have been chatting back and forth a little bit here. This was a huge game for the Bucs and for the Panthers. It was a chance for the Panthers to really put the NFC South in a stranglehold and a chance for the Bucs to pull ahead. Right, this was a situation where if we had lost, we're down 2 games, lose tiebreakers to 2 of the teams in the South, versus a situation that we have right now where we're tied 3 ways for the first place in the NFC South, but because of the tiebreakers, we actually would get the nod at this point. Now, it's far too early to start talking about who's ahead in the South, in my opinion, just like it was far too early to call this a must-win game. But it was clearly an important game, and it was an important game for both squads, and sadly for Nick and his squad, they did not come to play. We had really thought before the game, some folks from the Carolina Ground came over to the show on Thursday night. We talked about what we expected going into the game. Pretty much everyone predicted this to be a game won by a field goal. It was going to be a slugfest, a lot of injuries, a lot of real blue-collar football, fun to watch in a lot of ways for people who are football purists, but it would be ugly and be decided at the very end. And that was not what we saw. We saw a Buccaneers team that capitalized on some mistakes early. I was not aware of this being the third time that a punt had been blocked, but Geno Hayes comes through, blocks the punt, returns it, scoop score. We're up 7-0, and we kind of don't look back from that point forward. I thought the intensity level was not matched by Carolina, and I got to tell you, Big Nick, I agree with you. I think this has to go back to your coaching staff. We've done this before this year where the team has come out and looked flat and lethargic, and if it's the whole unit that's looking that way, you've got to blame the coaching staff, in my opinion, and in this case, it would be John Fox and his crew. A couple of things we had with regards to keys to the game. We talked about taking momentum with pain. This is a game that's always been kind of hallmarked as being a game of hits and violence, especially between these two rivals. There was a time where they didn't like each other at all. Now I think there's a lot of mutual respect, not a lot of the animosity we had back in the SAP days. But still, it's a game where you better bring your big boy pads and be ready to hit. And I felt the Bucs did that. Jermaine Phillips, Tenard Jackson, Quincy Black, a bunch of our guys were in there really laying some lumber. Dante Rosario will certainly remember the game. Steve Smith, for the first time in my life, I saw Steve Smith look like he was afraid. This is a guy who I don't really like necessarily because of the stuff he does, like punching Ken Lucas in the eye socket, right? I just don't have any time for that as a coach. I never liked that kind of crap. But you can't take anything away from the man as a player. He's tough as hell, and he's solid. But if you watch the replay on that little slant, that quick slant, he knew Tenard Jackson was coming. He shrunk away from the ball and got knocked out, leading to a pick as well. So you're going to get hit anyway, Steve. You know that. Make the catch. Right? You kind of made your living on that, making those tough catches and bouncing back up, which he did. I mean, it wasn't like he lingered on the ground, but still, the hitting, I think that the intensity and the hitting level was not anywhere near the equivalent on the Carolina Panthers side of the ball. Chris Campbell got a good lick in on work done later in the game. But that was about it. That's about all I saw. Now, John Beason for the Panthers played a hell of a game, got a bunch of tackles. I think he had 13 total, 8 solo, 5 assists. But at the end of the day, we got a lead, and once we got a lead, we can lean on our horses up front. There was a huge time of possession differential in the second half. I think it was close to 10 minutes. Pretty even in the first half. But in the second half, we were able to grind it out and just kind of shove the ball down your throat. And the defense just didn't have anything for it. Could have been fatigue. It was certainly warm as heck at the stadium. It was 91 degrees outside. I don't know what field temp was. I would have guessed probably about $102. And that's a lot of temperature to be getting ground on by the offensive line that we have. And then you see on our side, Ernest Graham, we have our fullback go down on special teams, Byron Storer with a blown ACL. Our contingency plan is to use Alex Smith, our tight end, as a fullback. Ernest Graham, who's our starting tailback, a guy who's gotten no respect really for playing a hell of a season last year in reserve, coming in for 2 injuries at tailback, and comes in on a new contract, going to be the guy, not getting the carries maybe he'd like to see. He's getting close to 15 a game. He says, you know what, I don't need the carries, and I'm a better blocker than Alex is, no offense. I'll block for Warwick. And then Warwick goes on to put 115 yards on the Carolina Panthers defense, who's held some incredible rushers under 100 yards. LT, LJ, Michael Turner, just to name a few. So, second key to the game was to keep the Panthers defense on the field, and that's what we just talked about. And the last one was to dictate through discipline. We're going to try and limit our turnovers because we've been having some turnover issues in Tampa, and limit our penalties. Well, we got half of that done. We created 3 turnovers. We didn't give the ball up at all. The 3 picks were huge. That doesn't even count the block punt. It was phenomenal. It resulted in a ton of points. The problem was after each one of these interceptions, we got a damn 15-yard penalty, whether it was Jovan Hayes' big backside doing a cartwheel, which I didn't know he could even do, taunting, unnecessary roughness, or sideline interference. I have no idea. And I'm not sure. I know if I were a Panthers fan, I wouldn't want to talk at all about the officiating probably because it was a loss. From a Bucs fan perspective, the officiating crew here, again, was a bit suspect in my mind. But at the end of the day, we got it done, got the game won, and that's what matters. From a swords and skulls perspective, which we do for every game, we were unanimous on our side. Myself and the doc, we have our sword going to Ernest Graham for exactly what I just talked about. In today's era of sports, all you hear about are the Pac-Man Jones, the Chris Henrys, right? These guys are out getting in trouble, being idiots, taking this opportunity that they have and squandering it away. You don't hear nearly enough about the guys like Ernest Graham who, like I had mentioned, despite not really getting the respect that he probably deserves for what he's been doing or getting as many touches maybe as he should get to get the stats he'd like to get, he steps up, and the quote after the game is, you know what, growing up, and I'm paraphrasing here, growing up, kids in my neighborhood wanted to be work done. So I had a chance to block for work done. It was one of the highlights of my career. That kind of selflessness, that kind of team-first mentality, I don't believe is as rare as it looks. It's a shame that the press doesn't cover it more because Ernest Graham is really kind of an indication of that. And it wasn't like he just went in there and held a spot. He was lighting people up. If you watch the tape on that, he's a hell of a fullback. Not that I want to see him a fullback. I like him as a tailback, but he got the job done and got it done solid. So at the end of the day, we take the game 27-3 going away. We're able to just kind of grind it out in the second half. There's things we need to improve on. Jeff Garcia looked much better than he did in week 1 and better than he looked in relief against the Broncos. So he's going to get the start against the Seahawks. We got a chance to kind of go on a little bit of a run here. The Seahawks come in injured. We'll talk a little bit more on that later this week on another YouTube drop. But we got the Seahawks on Sunday night. And then we go to Dallas, who's going to be without Tony Romo and apparently their punter. The punter is one I was worried about. We got a chance to run this thing up. Get some distance between us and the rest of the teams in the NFC South. You guys have got a big matchup in Carolina with the Saints, who are hitting on all cylinders on offense despite having a ton of injuries. That team has overcome a ton of adversity this year. So NFC South, always the bastard stepchild to the NFC East, but I'll tell you what, I'll put the NFC South against anyone in the league right now because I think we got 3 squads here that are playing just ridiculous ball, at least. And Atlanta, you can't sleep on Atlanta. We kind of handled them pretty good, but they come back and played some good ball too. So, again, didn't see what I thought I'd see out of Harris. I heard a lot about how solid he was and how hard he hit, and I didn't get a chance to see much of that. Peppers was non-existent. So, Carolina's got to go back to the drawing board. We got to go back and eliminate the penalties. We had 7 penalties for 80 yards. That's a discipline issue. I think it goes directly to the intensity that we had coming into the game, but that's no excuse. That's going to fall on the coaching staff. So, we'll see you guys if you can tune in on Thursday night at 7 o'clock, whatthebuck.net. We'll have our preview show for the Seattle Seahawks, and I'll drop a preview YouTube probably on Saturday as well. Thanks for listening, and Big Nick, we'll see you again Monday night, a little later in the season in Charlotte. You guys get a chance to get us back. So we'll see if anything turns out differently then. Till then, take care.